up? I'm extremely pale and white. Let's stop that right now. There we go. That's a little better. What's up, everybody? Welcome in. It's the Wrestling Mat. That might be why I got all this bright color right next to me. I'm Matt Camp. This is the Wrestling Mat. It's Monday. You can subscribe right now at thewrestlingmatshow.com. If you haven't, we are getting that much closer. Let me check. I got the running tally going because we're that much closer to 4,000 subscribers. Subscribers, that is the word. Very close. Could be coming today. With your help, it will happen today at thewrestlingmatshow.com. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you're tuned in. Check out our previous episodes. A lot was covered last week. Talked about my time working with Cody Rhodes on the Indies and in WWE, how he conducts himself when you don't see him on screen. Talked about how Dominic Mysterio wasn't necessarily part of the Judgment Day when you all thought he was, at least not according to creative and what I was told when I was interviewing the Judgment Day, minus Dominic Mysterio. I think he's a big part of it right now. Talked all about that, the relationship between TNA and NXT. Joe Hendry was a hot topic of conversation. And, of course, AEW putting on 250 last week with MJF and Will Ospreay. And the thought that they are that close to a new television deal, and maybe the fact that they'll end up on streaming services. Although that was clearly overblown, and sometimes, folks, it's important to use your own screenshots. Do your own work sometimes. Yes, it did indeed pop up on streaming services. Max, in terms of international, where it was already part of the deal. This is why wrestling media needs to finish, just do the rest of your homework. That's all I'm saying. Coming off a Slammiversary this past weekend, Joe Hendry is not the TNA champion, although he did pin the champion, Moose, in that matchup, but Josh Alexander stopped that, and it seems like we could be heading in between a showdown between those two, and people are indeed connecting the dots because Josh Alexander and All Ego Ethan Page used to be called the North in TNA. Now, they did break apart. There is thought that maybe there was some personal differences there. I don't think it's super heated from what I've heard, but maybe they just wanted to go in different directions. They have, but with Alexander now being a heel, and obviously that is what Ego is, All Ego Ethan Page, maybe there is something to that. Maybe. We'll see. Maybe we're putting the cart before the horse, which is an old reference for you young people out there. I'm saying maybe we don't need to get there just yet. All of that went down over the last week here at thewrestlingmatshow.com. Talked a little bit about Slammiversary. SmackDown was fine. They're clearly trying to clear the deck. They want Randy Orton. They want KO out of the mix. So Cody walks into SummerSlam all by himself. I wonder why. Maybe so a certain former tribal chief can find his way back into the mix to help Cody to take back his bloodline. We will see. We're only a couple weeks away from SummerSlam. And by the way, speaking of SummerSlam, you know what you can do? You can watch SummerSlam with me right here at the Wrestling Mat. Yes, that is what we're doing coming up, not this weekend, but next weekend for SummerSlam. And you can do that if indeed you subscribe as a member. If you get a membership here to the Wrestling Mat, thewrestlingmatshow.com's got all the details that you need. If you become a member between now and SummerSlam, we are offering this for all tiers across the board. $2.99 starts there. We just put the link up in the chat. You can check it out right now on YouTube. If you're not there, head over there right now. If you're watching on my X, go over to YouTube. You can check the link out, thewrestlingmatshow.com, where you can sign up for a membership. If you do, and the tiers start at just low as $2.99, you can watch SummerSlam live with me right here at the Wrestling Mat. I'll give you live analysis, thoughts, little side stories. If you've watched the show before, you know I'm prone to go off on some tangents. You'll get plenty of those if you join me. All kinds of stories, and I'll be taking your questions throughout. If you remember, any question that gets in there gets answered. We talk all about it. You could do that right now if you sign up at thewrestlingmatshow.com. Starting at $2.99, the membership tiers. That's the base level. It is indeed right above Todd. That's our base level. That's where it is. You can do it. You'll get members-only live chats if you sign up at the base level. Membership discounts when our merch comes, which will be soon. Special AMA episodes, you'll get to be part of that. You go up a tier, the mid-card tier. What will you get from that? We're going to be streaming live episodes of Raw, SmackDown, NXT, Collision, Dynamite that you can watch with me. Once again, I'll be taking your questions in those member streams. Also, on top of that, I'll be putting some extra content out, and we can do that together And you can get some extra content from me, like my top 5 SummerSlam matches and a lot more about that. Also, we have the highest level. It is the Matt event. The Matt event is the highest level. Here's what you get. I will follow you, as will our Wrestling Matt 23 account on social media. You get that. If you're with us for at least 90 days on that level, you get a special piece of merchandise. Every single month, we're going to do a drawing where someone will get 30 minutes one-on-one with me. AMA, ask me anything. I'll talk all about it. And on top of that, we're going to pick one member every single month. Every single month. And they get to pick some episode for all of us to watch back together. That's the highest tier. The highest tier gets you everything that you heard, mid-card, and our base level right above Todd. All of it starting at $2.99. If you sign up between now and SummerSlam on any tier, you get to watch SummerSlam with me right here at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. And I'll talk to everybody about anything during that time. So sign up for that. Now, we also said we were giving away a Jeff Jarrett signed Bendy, much like this wonderful one I got of the great Vladimir, the super fan, the other day. There's a double J one. You had super chats in there last week. For those that did over the last week and change, we have a winner. J Love Sports, congratulations. I don't know if you're here today, but you have won. Please, to claim your prize, J Love Sports, there it is. Send us an email, thewrestlingmatchshow@gmail.com, to claim your prize. Congratulations. And by the way, we'll be doing more of these giveaways. And as always, super chats move to the front of the line. You get your questions answered first. You get your comments shouted out. If you want to do that, you can do that right now on YouTube. So make sure you, if you're watching on X, head over to YouTube, get your questions in, get your comments in. We certainly appreciate them. There is really one main topic to get to today. And shout out to everybody in the chat. Navy, WB for life. Jacob, hello. What's going on? Thanks for being with us. I see some random conversations going on. That's fun. This is what the community is. Last night or this morning, I answered a bunch of your comments on YouTube from a wide range of subjects. So if you left a comment, you got an answer in some way, shape, or form from me. Always like interacting with you right here on the most interactive pro wrestling show around. So the big news from the week is about Bobby Lashley. Yes, Cam, it is indeed a crazy news story. I'm not shocked. We have not seen Bobby Lashley in months. The last time we were supposed to see Bobby Lashley, he was supposed to be part of the King of the Ring tournament. There he is, the almighty Bobby Lashley, who is 48 years old. And I'm going to tell you something right now. Most times I'd go, whoa, careful there. Not with that guy. Not with that guy. Bobby Lashley is genetically gifted and has been. But the efforts that guy puts in to his body, not only to look that way, but to upkeep his body. There's stories that come out. I think there was a story the other day about Derrick Henry, former Titans running back, current Baltimore Ravens running back, who says he puts like $250,000 into his body every year. I've heard that number go higher. Right? Russell Wilson spends $1 million. Tom Brady spends and you know what? When you're that level of athlete, you do put that much in to trainers, to equipment, and to whatever it is. And to me, Bobby Lashley is one of those guys that takes care of his body. He once did an interview from like his living room or his dining room in his house. There you go. Rob just put another one. $2 million for LeBron. Bobby Lashley's that kind of guy. He put a treadmill in his dining room. It's like he was running out of space. He's one of those guys like, wait, I can work out here? I'll work out here. That's what he did. He looks like that too. Bobby Lashley once, he's told me this. He told a lot of people this. He said, the trick to me looking as big as I do is my back. And obviously, that's not me. I don't look like that. But when he said it, I went, what do you mean? He said, a lot of people will do chest and they do front and they do a little back. He goes, if you do everything and you work that hard at your back, it looks that much bigger. His back is massive. He's big all the way around. Where he's worn some of those suit jackets. He's got to get like the drawstring to pull it together because it's not going to work if he uses something else. Buttons are not Bobby Lashley's friend. He's too big of a man. And he looks better than he did in his first run in WWE. And he takes care of his body that way. He is not somebody, he'll joke about getting crumble cookies or something like that. I think that's his big cheat meal. He takes care of himself. It's why he looks like that at 48. If you showed somebody that guy, no one is saying he's 48 years old. No one would question that. If you put him out there right now, and it sounds like he might be out there right now, if you didn't say his age, he's going to have suitors. No matter what. If he wants to go back into MMA stuff, if he wants to go to AEW, if TNA wants him, he's been there before. I'd be intrigued to see him in New Japan. I want to know what those matches look like. I love the fact that people are already making the Bobby Lashley Darby Allin match, which is kind of fun. And what that would look like, and Bobby just chucking him around, And Bobby can work with a variety of people. That always has been. When I saw the news, though, there's things that trickle out. And a lot of times with these, and it's not a release. From what I can tell, this is not a release. And that is very important to note. And I'm not saying it's that much different. But a release is, hey, you still have money that we have to pay you. We're done. We're not using you. Jinder just came back out, and we saw him at GCW. Hoping to get Jinder on this show. The Maharaja. I know, I guess can't use Jinder anymore. But he's no longer hindered. And he's making appearances. But they cut him. They cut people. They cut Dana Brooke. They cut Ziggler. That kind of stuff has happened. All indications are Bobby's contract is run out. And I'll get to MVP too, because I know his name came up in all of this as well. So, and that happens. That happens in sports. That happens in life. Hey, your contract's coming up. We're not going to renew it. Or we're not going to offer you what you want. We're going to offer you a number that we probably know you're going to say no to, but at least we gave it a shot. This is what we would feel comfortable paying you in the role we have for you, which is different than a release. A release is, no, we're not going to wait for this contract to be up. We're going to call it right there. That's enough. Sorry. A lot of these contract talks, whether it be Chad Gable or Becky Lynch or Natalya or Drew or Dominic, we've heard, hey, they re-signed. Now, it's not our business to know the numbers. Those numbers tend to come out a lot more in sports. You hear, free agency season and NFL and NBA and MLB and you hear those numbers. That gets negotiated through the media. That typically doesn't happen as much numbers-wise in the media. And I think the only thing we've heard close to a number is, well, Mercedes was offered more in AEW, and she's making the most money of any female ever versus what she would have made in WWE. And who knows how legit that is. But for Bobby Lashley, I'm sure he was making very good money. He was a main event guy. Not all the time. Probably not as much as he should have been. But he's WWE champion. And we're going to talk about that story and how he ended up with that championship. But they clearly didn't want to go with him anymore at the number they were paying him and whatever they offered, if they did offer. And supposedly they did. There's a lot of reports out there. All reports are pointing towards both him and MVP will be done. And they could say, hey, you're done. Like, they could tell them that, and they just got to wait for the contract to run out. And the key is, if their contracts are running out and they're done, they're free immediately. If they cut you, they pay you for 90 days. That's how it works. If they cut you with time left on your contract that goes past 90 days or is 90 days, you get paid, then you're done. But if your contract is done, you walk right out of the company, you can walk into a new one. That's what Adam Cole was able to do. His contract was up. He was in AEW very soon after his last WWE appearance. Stephanie Vaquer got out of, apparently, her CMLL deal and all the deals. And by the way, she didn't have a New Japan deal. She didn't have an AEW deal. That's who she worked for. She worked for those other companies because of the talent exchange and the partnerships, but she got out of her contract. They didn't have any kind of non-compete clause, which are BS anyway. She gets to show right up in WWE and wrestle in Mexico last weekend a couple of times. If Bobby Lashley is free and clear, he will get to go wherever he wants as soon as he wants to do so. When I saw the story, I wasn't surprised when it started to trickle out over the weekend. When I saw Big E's tweet, though, that's when I knew it was legit. And I don't know how many other people have commented on that within the company. But for Big E to put that out there, and Bobby was well-liked, believe me. You know, never acted above anybody, wasn't too big to talk to anybody, always super nice. And I liked working with him. I far from what I would call a friend or anything like that. Don't say we talk that often, but anytime I got to interact with him, whether it was interviewing him or just, you know, seeing him backstage, super nice, well-liked. Always liked seeing him post, you know, his workout videos with his kids. He had that mentality, and maybe he came from his military background or just the fact that he was always so disciplined. I don't think he looked at anybody that he worked with that wasn't causing him issue. Like, he wouldn't take his bad moods out on people. There were people that were ornery and angry about creative or how being treated within the company and they would be mad. They'd be in a mood. Some top stars, you'd have to kind of go, all right, stay out of his way, stay out of her way. And that's fine. I don't judge. You never know what's going on with people. Goodness gracious, do I know that to be true. You never know what's going on with people. So I never judged that. As long as they weren't, you know, I never had a major issue with anybody. You don't know what they're doing. You don't know what's going on. You know, it's annoying to fly and all that stuff. And I know people came in and maybe they weren't happy with things. And you know what? My job always was and I've talked about this. I talked about this in my Reddit AMA. If you came to Stanford on your day off, because the bump was a day off, you either worked Monday or you're working Friday or you worked last night. It was a day off. I wanted to make sure that we made the most of it and you had the most fun possible. Bobby included with that. DNC Digital, thank you for the super chat. Let's get that up there. Dom, if you could. There's a lot of talk of the fumble, but is there a possibility of this being a situation where Bobby decided to part amicably and leave on good terms? Absolutely. Good question. Appreciate the super chat. Thank you for that. And that's why I was talking about Bobby in that way. He might have looked around. He might have felt what happened and how he was booked or wasn't booked. The story initially was he was supposed to be in King of the Ring. He was injured. Dawkins took his spot. Dawkins is part of, whether they called it the Pride or not, that name was thrown around. And then that was it. And Bobby didn't work anymore. There seemed to be something cooking with him and Carmella. We'll get to that. But to answer DNC Digital's question, yeah, maybe Bobby said, listen, I'm 48. I feel 28. I have plenty left in the tank. I still like to fight. Maybe I can go with the shape my body's in, go work some MMA stuff. Wherever that may be. And it seems like there's a good amount of options out there. And he's had success doing that. You know, when he was in TNA, he was working MMA matches, fights, and had success. The thought of maybe going to AEW sounds good to him. Not as heavy of a schedule. Maybe he's looking around there and I can work a lot of different things. I can go do that. Maybe he just wants to be home. Maybe he just wants to spend time with his kids and refresh. I think you wonder about how the first time ended, and there was a lot with that, you know, things that were said. His ex-wife, wife at the time, what was said during, you know, I don't know those stories. I'm not going to tell those stories. I don't have the information on those stories. But that first run didn't end well. I do wonder, and this is strictly a creative question, was he seen as a bigger star in Vince's eyes versus Triple H? I know Vince liked him. I know Vince had him do some dumb stuff. You know, the sisters thing and the Lana wedding and all that. But there is a level of that that's also like, yeah, but I think there's something in you. So let's find some character. Let's find some personality. And if there's one knock on Bobby, I don't think anybody's going to go, that Bobby Lashley promo, and week after week, he's killing it. I don't think it's his thing. That's okay. They had people with him for a reason. MVP worked with him. Leo Rush worked with him. Beatdown Clan, going back to TNA days, that group was fantastic. Bobby's not the strongest promo. Whether he'd want to admit that or not, I don't know. His creative in the last, really since Vince has been gone, I don't think has been very good. I think everybody knows he was supposed to have that WrestleMania match with Bray. Didn't happen. And I thought it was kind of BS. And obviously, situation arose where Bray wasn't medically cleared or whatever. You don't have anything for Bobby Lashley? You got to put him in the Andre, and he can't even make WrestleMania? Bobby Lashley, who's done nothing wrong, who has been a model wrestler. You can't figure something better out for him? Last year, Mania, I'm talking about, not this year. This year wasn't great either, by the way. It became this backdrop for Bubba to get a big entrance in Philly. But the Final Testament stuff was, I don't think anybody's a real big fan of that group. And I saw a thing, and it got posted today, about he was supposed to, he was in that match, and I think he was like on the bump or something in Philly and was talking about wanting to be in the title picture. And then Cross goes on like Bobby Fish's stream and like is not happy that he's talking about that. Everybody in wrestling should want to be the world champ. Yeah, there are personal fights, but if a guy who's been a 2-time WWE champion, who defended that title successfully at WrestleMania against Drew McIntyre, of course he should want to get back there. A guy who owns a victory over Brock Lesnar should want to get back to the championship. Should be disappointed that he's in a random 6-man tag match when he's looking at The Rock and Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes main eventing. Getting 2 nights of main events, and he's got one throwaway 6-man tag. He's 100% right for that. He sold the match. Maybe he wouldn't have to talk about the main event if the story he was in was good. And that's a knock on creative, and that's a knock on nobody caring about the Final Testament. You can't tell me that group's ever going to... Think of how much money is invested in that group. 2 guys in a tag team, 2 managers, and Cross. 5 people. That act is 5 people. You can't tell me more than 2% of a crowd is going to see them, and that's a high number. That is an unbelievable amount invested in a low mid-card group. So yeah, if I was Bobby, after not getting on Mania the year before, I wouldn't be happy either. I'd want to be higher up in the world. I'd want to get back to the championship. He certainly has some gripes. Now, he put a lot of stuff out there. He told the story. And I don't think people would have expected this from Bobby, where he wanted to kind of go on a losing streak and fall into a depression and let his body go. Gain weight, be out of shape. That's the story. He's got to turn it back around. I don't think anybody would have expected that kind of character arc and building from Bobby Lashley. When I heard it, I went, yeah. I'd at least want to see it. I don't know if I'd want to see it under Vince, because God knows that would be sloppy fat jokes and fart jokes and him looking like a they would have went too far with that. But it's an interesting thought. Like, that's where he was at. That's the level he was pitching at. So the other part of this is his creative. You know, he recruited the Prophets, right? You guys got to be better. You got to do more. You got to reach higher. And my whole thing with that is that would have made sense if he was trying to push Dawkins and Ford to do more than they have done. To me, it's singles. Everybody in the world knows that Montez Ford could be a massive star for the company. Everybody, apparently, except for the people running the company right now. That is the number one booking, creative, error, malfeasance, screw up, whatever you want to call it. I can't say that strongly enough. Montez Ford should be a single star. Angelo Dawkins, and I see people saying it, has certainly proven himself. I'll go back to last year. Angelo Dawkins last year, they had that 4-way showcase tag match at Mania. And those 8 guys killed it. In a rather nothing match, they killed it. And when Dawkins hits the truck stick on Braun Strowman, I went, A, we're going to see that forever. B, as soon as I went, I would love to see Angelo Dawkins versus Braun Strowman. Soon as I saw it, I went, there is something. Dawkins has gotten so much better, and I know he's doing a lot of work in the Orlando dungeon with Natty and TJ and the host of different talent that goes through there from other companies, from indies. That dude put the work in. In between playing, the new college football game and in between posting about the Lakers and, Real Madrid, he works. By the way, he does so as a father of 1, soon to be 2. And he just got married. He started my computer, so I see my notes. Great dude. But Dawkins, this is not a Marty Jannetty situation. And I will say this, and I'm waiting for it to happen. Just because a tag team isn't tagging anymore doesn't mean they can't be friends. You can have people in a stable that go do their singles thing, and they're still backing each other up. Dawkins can do that. Montez can do that. I don't get why we'll break them up, send them on different and that was an old Vince thing. One goes this way, one goes this way. It doesn't have to be that way. It's okay to have friends. Good guy. And this is different under Triple H. Stables matter more. You need to have backup. That seems to be the bottom line of surviving in WWE, in kayfabe, in story. You got to have help. Everybody needs some kind of help. You've had to deal with the bloodline. You've had to deal with Judgment Day. You had to deal with, Alpha Academy, whoever it may be. There's strength in numbers. And if you didn't have it, you need to go find friends. So why not have friends? Why couldn't Bobby have recruited them? Why couldn't Bobby have recruited them? And say, listen, you guys have done it all in the tag team ranks. Because they have. Raw, SmackDown, NXT. Hell, they won the Evolve tag team titles under WWE contracts. They've done everything in the tag team ranks. I see more in you guys. I think you could push each other to greater heights. Now I'm believing. Instead, it was get back to the tag team titles. We could take over. Let's turn us heel. How do you turn somebody heel? Well, you go fight against Rey Mysterio. And they did. And people still didn't want to boo them. Still. They attacked an ultimate babyface in Rey Mysterio. Didn't take. Did not take. They put B-Fab with him. All right, we'll give him somebody. Nope. And then they just kind of, we're kind of babyfaces again. We'll throw them up against the Final Testament. But there was no explanation of that stuff. And Bob, when that first started, with Bobby coming out with those two, you went, I was excited when I heard about it. When I was there, and I went, that's a group. There's something there. You're telling me you couldn't add a fourth to that group? What? And I don't know if that was, I brought this up. I'll bring it up again. I said it yesterday or did last week. There was talk of reforming the Hurt Business. And they were going to put, I saw it with my own eyes. There were creative pitches to put Mello and Trick in the group, to potentially put Odyssey Jones in the group. I believe Omos was supposed to be part of the group. There you go. I don't think I talked about that. As I'm remembering it now, they were going to there were talks of doing it. Didn't happen. And then they do the stuff with the Prophets and Bobby, and I was like, this is not the Hurt Business. This is a different thing. How do three guys who are that talented and at times super over, how does that not work? Because you don't explain things well enough, because the motivations don't make sense. Bobby's always talking about get back to championship. He was, he had a couple of shots at it, but not really. And whether he got hurt or not, that's part of it too. He never went anywhere. Also, I never liked the idea of Bobby Lashley being the leader of a group and the mouthpiece. It's not his strongest point. You could have put not anybody, but you could have put somebody in that group. I'll tell you what. I had an idea, and we'll throw this up as a poll. Did WWE break up the Hurt Business too soon? That's up as a poll right now. You can vote it on YouTube. You can vote at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. If you're watching elsewhere, go vote there. I think they did. And I'll tell you why. That was a heel group. It should have been a heel group. That was where did they have the unfortunate timing of being something during the Thunderdome era? Probably. Would that group have gotten over as baby faces or heels? Would they have gotten the proper heat if there were fans? I happen to think so. I will go back to the only redeeming thing of Retribution is when they were taking over Raw and they had people that you knew and random jobbers or extras or whatever that were part of the group. At one point, the Hurt Business had enough. And they walk out on the top of that stage. I'll give you I'm looking at it now. It was about 3 years ago. And they walk out on the Thunderdome stage. And they pipe in the noise. They jackets off. And Keith Lee and Drew McIntyre think about that. Keith Lee and Drew McIntyre decimated in the ring. They take off the watches. They take off the jacket. And they march down there like four bad motherfuckers. And they looked at about 15 people in the ring, and they were ready to go, and I believed every bit that they could whoop their asses. And they started to do that. And they did random tags and stuff, and it didn't go anywhere. But that group on that night looked as big, as menacing, as believable as it gets, with Bobby Lashley in the way, with Shelton, with Cedric, with MVP. They always looked like that. They always had that look. We're dead serious. But when they did all that and they took off and it was time. Shit was on. And I believe if that had happened with somebody, with a crowd, with a better group on, you think that group right now, if built up correctly, couldn't have stood up to the Bloodline? The original one, not the current one, and maybe that too. If that group was built correctly, totally believable. Maybe add one more. MVP's at the point where I'd rather him be just a mouthpiece than a wrestler. And he didn't do much wrestling in the last couple of years anyway. But if you had added one more, let's say it was Ricochet, because there was the talk of that. And they tried to get him in the group. Ricochet, Cedric, Bobby, Shelton Benjamin. Yeah, I believe. And then they just kind of broke him up, and it was like, oh, Bobby's got to be on it. That's a big Vince thing. If you turn somebody babyface, well, they got to be on their own. Why? Total fumble. That's a Bobby fumble. The stuff of the last year was fumble with Bobby. Everything with the Profits was fumble. It wasn't done correctly. And, to DNC question, I see your next super chat. Certainly appreciate that. We'll get it up there in a second. Hang on with that, Dom. Maybe he just looked and said, listen, I appreciate it. If you offered me this, I'm not, or whatever. He looked at it and said, I'm not going to do this. I'm good. He has enough stuff to point to and say, you know what? I'm 48. I know I have some good years left. Maybe not a lot of good years. I'm going to take those elsewhere. Like, what if a War Games match had happened? You're telling me that could... Hell, throw Omos in the group. I don't know. The Hurt Business could have been a group of badasses that were believable to take on the Bloodline. And I also bring that up. Roman Bobby happened 2 times ever. 2 singles matches. Bobby beat Roman in Extreme Rules 2018. A week later, Roman beat Bobby to be the number 1 contender for the Universal title. That's it. Now that's the entire. Someone just attacks me for my figures. That's the Raw match or Extreme Rules or whatever. The entire Roman reign as champion, as the guy. Bobby worked 2 live events and 1 TV match. And it was the same combination. It was Big E as WWE champion. It was Roman as Universal champion. And it was Bobby right off the loss to E on the cash-in. Also, that didn't do any favors for Bobby either. 90% of you, by the way, said that the Hurt Business was broken up too soon. And I agree. They left a lot of money on the table. They left a lot of feuds on the table. And I understand, you can go, well, listen, Bobby at his age shouldn't have been the one to beat Roman. I'm not saying about beating Roman, but you know what? From things that were missed during that whole run with the Bloodline, I think an AJ Styles Roman match was missed, a one-on-one. I think a Bobby Lashley Roman match was missed. And they could have worked that off of War Games or what. And I get it. The big War Games match they had, the Bloodline one, excellent. Big night for Sammy, all that. It was done well. I was in the building for that. But it seemed like even before that, Hurt Business Bloodline should have happened. Bobby Lashley got pinned by Roman in that triple threat on Raw. It's a really good match, by the way. I was even looking back, and I was like, when was that? And, it's rated highly on Cage Match. It's rated, Meltzer put a pretty nice rating on it. A lot of people agree it's a good match, and it is. September of 2021. So Roman's champ about a year at that time. And it was the lead-in to the match against Demon Finn at Extreme Rules. So they got Roman to win over Bobby. And then that weekend, the top rope broke for some reason, and Roman beat Demon. How we didn't get a Bobby Lashley Roman Reigns major feud, I don't know. I don't know how you do that. I'll take DNC Digital's question here, and we'll get back to Bobby because $10 super chat, a new record. Thank you, DNC Digital. Put it up. Is Marty Jannetty the only real Jannetty? Teams like Miz Morrison, Hardy's, Edge Christian, Outlaws, Usos, either both became stars or better together or perceived Jannetty became the star. That's a good point. I'm sure there's others. Like Miz Morrison, Marty Jannetty also had a ton of, and still does have a ton of issues outside the ring. Miz obviously became the bigger star of him and Morrison. Morrison still has a very good career. Hardy's totally fine. Edge and Christian, totally fine. Both have done quite well. The Outlaws, I don't think either of them really hit big heights. The Usos is maybe a wait and see. If you think about it. Like, if we're still going post-breakup, Jimmy's just kind of there. I don't know. I don't think it's anything. Am I missing any big tags? Oh, Bubba and Devon. That's a good one from Dom. Yeah, Bubba did more as a singles than Devon. Not that Devon was bad, but I mean, Jannetty just. The thing with the Jannetty thing that everybody always talks about, Shawn was clearly the bigger star. Marty just screwed up his whole life. And Shawn had plenty of issues as well. Shawn just happened to be really good. And he got a lot of leeway, and he had people protecting him and taking care of him when he was allegedly taking somas or whatever and acting like a jackass, which he'll talk about and has talked about. But Shawn was really good. Marty was a hell of a worker. Marty just couldn't keep his shit together. That's different. But that's a fair point, DNC Digital, that the Jannetty talk is really maybe more of a one-off thing. Let's see with Jimmy and Jay, though. Let's see. Jay, clearly a better talk. Clearly more over. Well, back to Bobby. As I looked here, I was just kind of jotting some things down. They also wrecked, as heels, Raw Underground, which, listen, you know I'm a fan of Raw Underground. But, like, they just wrecked it. And then that was kind of the end of it. But they had that dominance. They looked the part. Bobby looked the part. Then you think about, so I want to bring this story up. So Bobby is U.S. champ. This is January, February 2021. And he's going to defend the U.S. title against Morrison and Riddle. Good God. I believe Keith Lee was supposed to be in that match and something happened. I think like something that might have been when he was dealing with COVID stuff or whatever. But Bobby comes on. And when we did pay-per-view, or they were still called pay-per-views back then, when we did pay-per-view bump episodes that would air on the day, we would tape them the day before, the day prior, whatever. So Cesaro was on, and Bobby was on, and Riot Squad was on. So we have Bobby on, and he's on early in the show. And Bobby is mid-card. He's working Riddle. He's working Morrison. He's the U.S. champ. He's not near the title. And remember, he's not WWE champion yet at this point. He comes on this episode, and like I said, he was fine on the show. There were times where he was good. There were times when I'm like, that was okay. And that's up to him. I always believe that if you got extra TV time, no matter what show it is, you should take advantage of it. Just because it's on the bump doesn't mean it won't appear in other places. Although, admittedly, it didn't get treated that way. And I'll get to that in a second. But still. So Bobby gets on there, and we're trying to sell the U.S. title match. And it's Riddle and Morrison. And I'm like, he might retain, or, it's triple threat. He doesn't have to get pinned. And he gets on there at a time when he's in the mid-card. And he's not touching Roman. He's not touching Brock. And he calls out everybody. He just goes, I want to fight. I want to get hit in the face. Go back and watch this. There it is. Goodness gracious. Okay. That's how long ago things were. Everybody's in different places. I got the red title behind me. I got the 24/7 title. Anyway. Bobby's cutting this promo, and he's talking about wanting fights. And he kind of, and not in a way that he didn't want to have, I don't care about star matches. I don't care about my matches looking good. He was in the gray area, which I appreciated. I want to have fights. I want to fight the best. And he calls out Brock. And he calls out Roman. I think he called somebody else out too. But it was a very real Bobby Lashley that I sensed some frustration from creatively, that's saying, hey, why am I not up in that conversation? Give me Drew. Give me Bobby. Give me Brock. Give me Roman. And all of it was believable. He was right to think that way, as he should be. But there was definitely a level of realism. And I mean, he went off. And to me, it made him. And if the right people saw it and enough people saw it, you would have been, holy shit, that guy should be in the main event. I want to see him have those fights. And we had a thing on the show. Clearly didn't mean that much. Where after the show, our producer, and he would sometimes ask me for help, hey, what can we send? Creative wants to know what came of the show. So maybe they could use something. 99.9% of the time, those notes probably didn't even get read or ignored or whatever. And I was like, as soon as we were done, I'm like, we gotta make sure the right people see this. He just cut the promo of his life. He came across angry, fierce, ready to go, wanting the spot. He lost the triple threat match. Now, if you remember, Miz gets Bobby's services. Drew wins the chamber, defends it successfully. Miz cashes in, Miz new champ. 2 weeks later, Bobby, as a heel who helped a heel, helps Miz win the WWE Championship. I was very happy about that. I don't know if that was always the plan. I don't know if he knew that at the time. Probably during that span of time under Vince, probably had no idea. And he was WWE champ, and he took that into WrestleMania. And he beat Drew, and I was surprised he beat Drew. And he had the run he did, and it was okay. And then he ended up obviously dropping it to E, but he dropped it to E when he was hurt, and E cashed in, which did nothing for E. I still go back to that. I'm happy E got his moment, but for E to cash in on an injured heel who was clearly hurt, who they made a point to say was hurt, And then Bobby gets the chance at Brock, right, at Rumble the next year. And that should have been, they had a couple of matches. They had the weird finish where Bobby was 3 seconds better and Brock made the mistake, and then Brock went nuts. And then Bobby gets to fight Brock for the title, and it ends up being just a back. Bobby gets whooped the match. Like, it's not competitive nearly enough. And it's just a backdrop for Paul to turn back on Brock, to get the title back on Roman, to get the champion versus champion and all that stuff. But so Bobby beats Brock. So then Brock's got reason to be pissed at Roman. And then what do they do the next month? They do the chamber and they do the fake concussion angle. So Bobby doesn't have to get pinned, so they protect him, and then Brock can win the title back, and he F5's Theory off the pod, and that's it. Like, they tried to protect Bobby, but it didn't work. So he won with help against Brock, got taken out of the chamber, and never got a title of that level again. And it was like they tried to protect him, but they didn't do right by him. They almost wanted to always keep him in that upper mid card. And I never got that. And there were times where Bobby was super over just because he was Bobby Lashley. And he looked like he did. I think his entrance looked cool. I thought that music was great. They hit a home run with that. I was a big fan of that. I thought it made him a big deal. But it may go back to the thought that maybe Bobby was just more important in Vince's WWE than Triple H's WWE. Even the championship reign, even both of those championship reigns, did Bobby not get utilized correctly? I answer comments about stuff. They need a title. Titles don't mean all that much. if you're not booked well. Sometimes the title can weigh people down. And they hope, well, this person can make the championship, or the championship can make the... I don't think either of Bobby's WWE, especially the second one, was booked very well. I don't think it did him any favors. And I don't put that on him. Even with 2 WWE championship reigns, we ask you in the poll, did WWE not utilize Bobby Lashley correctly? I think they left money on the table with everything I talked about. Now, as it relates to MVP, who also seems like he could be going, I saw the Instagram comment, all that. MVP came back to WWE as a surprise in the 2020 Royal Rumble because it was in Houston where he was living at the time. That was, from what he told me, that was it. And enough people liked him, and he had supporters, so they kept him on, and he wrestled. He was a producer. I don't know if anybody remembers this, and I don't expect you to. A month later, we're doing the Elimination Chamber 4 days before the pandemic, shut everything down. He's at the watch-along. He was there. He was doing, so he was a producer, and then he became Bobby's guy. And that was a very good pairing. It got the most out of both guys. P was far past of what he was going to be in the ring, and that's father time. You don't win that battle. He didn't need to be. He knew how to pump up Bobby Lashley. MVP always carried himself the same way. Always carried himself as a top guy, regardless of his spot. Wanted to be treated as such. It was almost a demanding of respect. I think that could rub some people the wrong way, but I got it. I think he was very proud of his accomplishments. He was very proud that he got to go to Japan and become the first IWGP Intercontinental Champion. By the way, a tournament that actually took place in the ECW arena. Go look that up. It's a weird timeline. Him against Yano, but he was very proud of that. When he left WWE, I think he talked about Laurinaitis helping him get into Japan. That mattered to him. He liked that. He grew up on that. He was still doing, I think, like jiu-jitsu tournaments and wanted to be recognized for that. Even during the Hurt Business stuff. That's how he handled himself. I had heard that after he was done with Bobby and done with Omos, or initially done with Omos, that he had tried to kind of maybe pair himself with Mello, and maybe that's where the Hurt Business stuff came from. Didn't happen. I think both posted about that on social media, working out together. I will tell you that when they put him with Omos, there was an effort to make Omos better. And I don't think anybody will say that. Omos is great. Jordan is a hell of a dude. As nice as can be, the gentle giant, that term was meant for him. But I think, a lot of people know he stands out more than anybody, quite literally, but it's about finding everything else. And that feud with him and Bobby, when then MVP joined his side, everybody wanted to make Omos better. I remember the Backlash match where Omos beat Bobby in the dunk, as Cody would call it, in Providence. And I remember talking to Omos, right? I said, you just had the match of your life. And he was and Bobby came up to him and talked to him after. And Abyss, who was producing the match, I said, man, you guys hit a home run with that one. Everything laid out, put together. MVP. There was an effort to help Omos. And MVP was part of that. And that's not just when you walk out there. That's listening to the guy. And Omos wanted to listen. And he was a good guy that way. He was still doing, even as of a few months ago, he was still doing some house shows. And he would beat up Tozawa. And he was a special attraction. He was the Rumble and all that. But MVP was put with him to help him. I don't know what they're doing with Omos now. But this all came from a surprise Rumble appearance, as it has with many others, that wasn't supposed to really be much. And then it was producer on camera, and he just ends up with Bobby, and it works, and we get the Hurt Business out of it. And I think there's actually the fact that they left money on the table or feuds on the table. And the fact that every couple of months it was like, are they going to reform it? They should put this guy in. They should put this guy in. Maybe there is something to bringing them back together. Maybe we see the beatdown. I'm not going to call it the Hurt Business. Great name. Don't know if they'll call. I don't think they're going to be able to call it that. But I think there is something to thinking that could come back around in some way, shape, or form. I hope Bobby gets what he wants. I want to tell one quick story, and I may have told it before. The New Orleans Mania 34, not the Miracle on Bourbon Street, not the Yeselmania one, the second one. I was calling House of Hardcore, and we were on after the NXT show that night. We were literally waiting for it to go off the air so we didn't want people to be like watching that, or it was on the screens. So, especially WrestleMania weekend, everybody in wrestling is there. And people are working 6, 7, 8 shows or whatever. We had Carlito and MVP on the card. Both pros, both knew what they were doing. And I remember like talking to MVP or just group conversation, like, this is going to be performance art tonight. You watch. And those two guys stalled like crazy, and they worked the crowd. And it was like, as I think MVP called it, like Shakespeare. They knew what they were doing. They knew people just wanted to hear the entrance and the music and see the ball in and the apple, and they played the hits. I don't think they took a single bump in the match. Then nobody cared. They stalled, they messed around, but they gave the people what they wanted to see. That was another great learning experience. You go to that show, you're not going to see a 15-minute classic between MVP and Carlito. You want to see nostalgia. You want to hear, I spit in the face of people who don't want to be cool. You want to see the apple. You want to see someone get spit with the apple. You see MVP come out with his music. With the chains. Hit the ball. And that's what they did. I appreciated that. So we'll see what happens next. J-Love Sports. Put it up there. Let's go. J-Love Sports, by the way, if you're just joining us, you did indeed win the Double J Bendy. Make sure you shoot us an email at thewrestlingmatchshow@gmail.com to claim your prize. What's good, Matt? I've always felt that when Vince had Cena go over Lashley at Great American Bash, I knew WWE never thought Lashley was a top guy, just a higher mid-card guy. Most def, a lot of meat left on the bone. And that was the first time. So there might be something to... It's. I think you make a fair point. I also think you have to realize it's John Cena. A lot of people got fed to John Cena. A lot of people. And a big win over Bobby Lashley, sure. Makes Cena look that much better. Interesting point, though, because it doesn't mean that everybody had to get fed to John Cena. And certain people stayed away from John Cena. But they had Bobby lose. I was a big Bobby fan. I saw it in ECW when he came over. He famously had a match with Kenny Dykstra on Raw. And I remember thinking how good it was. Like, it popped out that way. Such a rant. Dykstra's wearing, like, the maroon shorts. It's post-Spirit Squad. I think I have this right. And they were going, like, whoa. But Bobby always had everything down. Like, he looked the part. He could work. He got, they had him in there with Finley and that, U.S. title stuff he was doing, stuff with Booker. He almost won the King of the Ring that one year, and they went with Booker instead. But that first one, man, there was some stuff that happened backstage. And I don't know this, it's all out there and reported on. It's not for me to talk about. Andrew Reid just saying shouldn't have been the guy to beat Cena in 2007. Yeah, there's a lot of the what ifs with Bobby. And we'll stay on this story because I want to see where he goes next. Hey, if he comes available, I'd love to have Bobby on here. We've talked to him before. Raw tonight, man, there's some stuff on there, but CM Punk's back tonight. Let's see where they go with him and Rollins. Let's see where they go with him and Drew. I would think with only one more Raw to go, you need to get Punk and Drew on the card tonight. I would go unsanctioned. That's my call. Also, very quickly, Collision started their residency, if you want to call it, at the newer arena in Arlington. A little yellow for me. I think I can get used to it. I want to see if they change it up a little bit, if they spruce it up a little bit. But I like the idea of it. There's a lot of good wrestling fans down there, and I want to see what they add. I want to see what they do. But We'll see. More about that. We'll talk more about Raw tomorrow. Once again, the memberships available now. And if you sign up today at any tier, and they start at just $2.99, if you get into the membership between now and SummerSlam, you can watch SummerSlam with me and all the members here at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. That $2.99 tier, which is right above Todd, as we call it, will get you members-only live chats, priority reply to comments, special merch discounts when that comes out. You can be part of our special AMA episodes. Step above the main event. Excuse me, the mid-card level. We'll get to the main event. You can watch live episodes of Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite. We're going to choose one of those episodes to probably watch once a month. We'll dissect it, answer questions, some bonus content, my top 5 SummerSlam matches. You'll get part of that. And then the main event, our highest level. Here's what you get. You get everything I just mentioned. We'll follow you on social media. Me from the Matt Camp and from Wrestling Matt 23. Special piece of merch if you're with us for at least 90 days. We're going to do a random drawing from those members every single month where you get a 30-minute AMA with me one-on-one. And one member at that top tier will get chosen to pick an old show. You name it, and we will all watch it together. All of that available right now. And if you want to be part of that SummerSlam watch party, whatever you want to call it, $2.99, the bottom tier, any tier though. Anything I just mentioned, you sign up for any membership tier, you can watch SummerSlam with us. Shout out to J Love Sports. Thanks for another super chat. Make sure you email us at thewrestlingmatchshow@gmail.com to claim your Double J Bendy. Thanks to everybody, by the way, for the super chats today. We're going to have more giveaways, including those coming up very, very soon. So make sure you check that out. We'll talk more about Bobby Lashley tomorrow. We'll talk more about Raw and any other news that predicts. There always seems to be something. We will be back tomorrow right here to talk about wrestling even more. Subscribe to thewrestlingmatchshow.com. Share it. Leave a comment. I will see you tomorrow right here and each and every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern.